What if the relentless hustle, this modern God we worship, what if this very productivity we trumpet from the rooftops is actually gutting our ability for real, deep insight? Could it be that a certain kind of idleness, yes, idleness, the broken line is not some dreadful vice, but the very oxygen for a genuine spiritual life, or even a profoundly intellectual one? Tonight, we are diving headfirst into Aphorism 58, from Part 3 of Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, a section ominously titled The Religious Character. And here, Nietzsche, he does not just analyze, he dissects. He lays bare the psychological and cultural dirt that either feeds or utterly starves what he calls the genuinely religious life. He draws a razor-sharp line, a provocative one, linking our modern, tireless industriousness to a sweeping unbelief. And then he unleashes a truly scathing critique of the modern scholar. So, prepare yourselves. Prepare to question the very bedrock of your jam-packed lives. And as for wrestling Nietzsche into a single, digestible serving, well, that is the Everest we climb every lecture, is it not? But let us charge in. So Nietzsche kicks things off with a real bombshell. Has anyone at all, truly gotten it? Truly grasped, he demands, the absolute necessity of outward idleness or half-idleness for what he calls a genuinely religious life? Now, hold on. This is not your garden variety laziness he is selling here. No. He ties it to microscopic self-examination, which, let us be honest, sounds less like some dusty 19th century pronouncement, and more like it is ripped straight from today's latest mindfulness guru's playbook. Am I right? And, get this, to that tender state of composure which calls itself prayer and is a constant readiness for the coming of God. Picture it, a kind of psychic breathing room, an inner world not choked and crammed with the ceaseless clamor of doing. This idleness, he insists, arrives with a good conscience. Maybe, just maybe, historically tinged with an aristocratic feeling that work is disgraceful. Come on, admit it. That is a little thrill some of us have felt, just for a fleeting second, staring down a mountain of seminar reading, right before our good old modern conscience yanks us back by the collar. No, he is not necessarily stamping his approval on a life of pampered leisure, but he is absolutely pointing to something profound. That relentless, soul-grinding labor, it might just be dragging our spirit's higher functions through the mud. So it begs the question, does it not? What kind of work truly is worthy of us, if the very work that defines our modern age is seen as something that cheapens us, makes us coarser? Now this idleness with a good conscience, it is a potent idea, is it not? And for us modern creatures, maybe a deeply unsettling one. Because it is not about floating in some empty void of unproductivity. Oh no, it is about cultivating a state that is wide open, receptive to the whisper quiet, the numinous, the profoundly personal. And you have to ask, do you not? Is not this very idleness, this attentive stillness, the absolute bedrock for any real creative lightning strike, for any genuinely original philosophical leap? Just try it. Try birthing some intricate new theory, some deeply shaded artistic masterpiece, while your mind is constantly shattered, fragmented by what Nietzsche is about to skewer, that noisy, time-consuming, self-satisfied, stupidly proud industriousness. Think about it. The very architecture of our lives today, especially in our own world of academia, with its relentless drumbeat for output, for measurable results. It feels precision-engineered to wage war against this aristocratic mental leisure? Are we, in our headlong chase for knowledge, actually torching the very ground where true wisdom, where real breakthroughs might grow? This is not just about religion, folks. This is about the very ecosystem of deep thought itself. And it is exactly this modern industriousness, Nietzsche thunders, that acts as the most powerful training ground, the ultimate education and preparation in unbelief. He looks at the German free thinkers of his day and sees a vast majority whose religious instincts have been utterly dissolved, washed away by generations of this frantic, relentless activity. Long pause. They simply no longer know what religion is good for. They stare at its existence with a kind of dull amazement. That is a stunning image, is it not? Not blazing hatred, not outright war, but a kind of dumbfounded, blank incomprehension. These good people, as he labels them. And oh, when Nietzsche calls someone good people in this tone, you can practically feel the sarcastic smirk. Can you not? They are utterly consumed, swallowed whole by their businesses, their fleeting pleasures, the endless demands of the fatherland, the daily grind of newspapers, those inescapable familial obligations. There is simply no room, no time left for religion. Especially, he sneers, when its use is not glaringly obvious. Mary's people cannot possibly be going to church just to spoil a good mood, they mumble to themselves. And this observation, let me tell you, this goes way beyond just a finger-wagging at 19th century German middle-class life. No, if we really lean into this insight, what Nietzsche is unearthing is not just a simple lack of minutes on the clock. It is a radical rewiring of who we are, a fundamental reshaping of our very being by the crushing logic of ceaseless activity and cold, hard utility. Think about it. Think about this pervasive beast some now call the attention economy. And I will be honest with you, even as someone who spends their days studying these very critiques, I am in a daily cage match with its allure. That irresistible siren song of the notification, the hypnotic void of the endless scroll. It is a brutally real, frighteningly modern version of that very fragmentation Nietzsche warned us about. Is not this just a newer, perhaps even more treacherous, strain of that stupidly proud industriousness? An environment where every tick of the clock can be cashed in, every hello goodbye is a transaction, every flicker of thought relentlessly hammered into efficiency and output. Long pause. A way of life like that, it does not just elbow religious contemplation out of the room. It arguably grinds down our ability for any sustained, non-transactional dance with the world, whether that dance is aesthetic, ethical, or philosophical. That dull amazement at religion. Maybe it is just one symptom of a much bigger sickness, a widespread withering of our power to see, to feel, to value anything that does not slot neatly into a box marked immediately useful or quantifiably profitable. So, the crucial question smacks us in the face. What kinds of human experience, what precious ways of knowing become unthinkable, or at the very least agonizingly difficult, when the ironclad rule of our culture is perpetual, deafening busyness? And this creeping apathy, this pervasive shrug of indifference, Nietzsche points out, is not just infecting the middle-class Protestants beaver away in their noisy trade centers. Oh no, it also defines, and this should hit close to home for us, the majority of industrious scholars and the whole university apparatus. Theologians, he cannot resist quipping, they are the curious outliers. They keep spinning increasingly many and increasingly subtle riddles for the poor psychologist to unravel. A wonderfully sharp little jab, do you not think? I bet it still draws a wince or two in certain hallowed halls of academia. A classic Nietzschean scalpel thrust, implying their very persistence in this modern setup is a kind of bewildering, fascinating freak occurrence. But for your run-of-the-mill scholar, actually taking the problem of religion seriously, that demands an almost superhuman feat. A good will, or maybe whimsical will, he calls it. And why is that, you ask? Because their entire craft, their precious craftsman-like industriousness, the very thing their modern conscience dragoons them into upholding, and you see it, right? You see how Nietzsche is masterfully twisting this noble idea of conscience, warping it from a moral compass into a drill sergeant for ceaseless busy work. Left arrow. Well, that craft hardwires them to look down on religion with a kind of superior, almost gracious amusement. And this amusement, he adds, often carries a faint, sneering whiff of a slight contempt for what he assumes to be an uncleanliness of spirit that exists wherever anyone still supports the church. Let us really lock on to that phrase. Uncleanliness of spirit. Wow, that is a brutal verdict, is it not? But Nietzsche is not just flinging mud. He is showing us this is how the scholar sees it, a direct symptom of their unique intellectual programming. It screams of a yearning for some kind of conceptual sterility, a pristine, orderly world, all neatly labeled and rationally accounted for. And from this sparkling clean world, the often chaotic, contradictory, and way beyond rational claims of religion are shoved out, banished as somehow contaminated, filthy. It is a gut-level reaction, this uncleanliness, almost an intellectual gag reflex. Get that away from me! We are not talking about some cool, reasoned dismantling of religious doctrine here. No, it is more primal than that, a visceral, almost artistic revulsion from anything that feels intellectually messy or emotionally unevolved. The scholar, seen through this lens, is the poster child of an enlightenment that worships clarity, that deifies critical distance. But maybe, just maybe, they're paying a terrible price. A shriveling of empathy for, or even the basic ability to grasp, ways of experiencing the world that do not neatly fit into its high-status intellectual boxes. So, what in God's name does it mean for an entire intellectual tradition if its very craft breeds a built-in reflex to just write off huge swaths of human experience as unclean? And get this, even when our scholar, armed with all their historical research, and therefore Nietzsche slyly adds, not on the basis of his personal experience, no, heavens no, the text has a dash, even when they manage to tiptoe towards religion with something resembling reverential seriousness. Nietzsche flatly declares they do not get 1 inch closer to the raw reality of what still passes for church or piety. Long pause. In fact, he says, it is possibly even the reverse. Their inborn, culturally drilled indifference, it just gets dressed up, sublimated into a prissy caution and cleanliness that shuns contact with religious people and religious affairs. And then, boom, he drops a truly devastating insight. It can be the very depth of his tolerance and humanity that urges him to evade the subtle crises intrinsic to toleration itself. Long pause. Now that is a philosophical firebomb. To suggest that tolerance, this virtue we hoist on a pedestal, this crowning glory of modernity, might actually be a highly polished, super-sophisticated dodge, a clever trick for keeping your hands clean, for maintaining a safe distance, instead of truly grappling with the difficult, perhaps earth-shattering otherness, that profound, irreducible, sheer differentness of deep, unwavering religious conviction. Long pause. And all this, Nietzsche says, culminates in the scholar's peculiar brand of divine type of naïveté, a special kind of cluelessness, custom-made for our times, Admirable, childish, boundlessly foolish, he calls it. And where does this spectacular naïveté reside? It is baked into the scholar's unshakable belief in his own superiority, in the smug good conscience he has of his tolerance, in that utterly clueless, blissfully simple certainty with which he just knows, instinctively, that the religious person is an inferior model, a lesser being, something he, in his infinite wisdom, has outgrown, evolved beyond, risen far above. And then comes the knockout blow. The final, annihilating punch. This scholar, the shining beacon of modern intellect, is himself nothing more than a presumptuous little dwarf and rabble-man, a brisk and busy brain and handiworker of ideas, of modern ideas. Long pause. Whoa. This is not just Nietzsche taking cheap shots. No, it is a profound, searing indictment of an intellectual stance that mistakes its own blinkered, historically shaped viewpoint for some kind of absolute, God's-eye truth. So, could it be, dare we ask, that our own sophisticated contemporary forms of academic tolerance sometimes wear a similar mask of naïveté? A deep-seated fear of diving into those subtle crises that erupt when truly different ways of seeing the world collide head-on. Is this cleanliness of ours really just a phobia, a terror of intellectual contamination, a desperate need to keep our precious modern ideas locked away in a sterile room, untouched by the wonderfully messy, often wildly contradictory realities of human belief and raw experience? The scholar, in this harsh, unforgiving light, morphs from a titan of insight into something else entirely, a mere product, a captive, of a very specific and devastatingly limited moment in history. So, Nietzsche's Aphorism 58, it is a sledgehammer blow, is it not? A blistering indictment. Our modern obsession, our fanatical devotion to industriousness and utility, it does not just steal our time for religion. No, it fundamentally deforms our inner landscapes. It cultivates that dull amazement at anything spiritual, and breeds a scholarly, naively, so profound, it mistakes its own programmed indifference for clear-eyed superiority. And so, we are left. No, we are forced to stare into the mirror and ask, is our prized cleanliness of thought just a flimsy shield we cower behind, a defense against the messy, magnificent, terrifyingly profound questions of existence itself? This devastating critique of the modern soul's capacity for anything deep, anything truly resonant, it lays down a critical marker. Next time, as we forge ahead into Part 3, the religious character, we will plunge into Aphorisms 59 and 60. There, Nietzsche uncovers the wisdom in human superficiality. Yes, wisdom in superficiality, as a survival tactic, and he will dissect the intricate, maybe even utterly bizarre fabric of loving humanity for God's sake. Get ready. We are going even deeper into the labyrinth of belief and its stunningly paradoxical heart.